Hello, random video, but I've just had something very exciting in the post, which I'm about to open. This is my next game that I've developed. So many of you probably know I have created something of a profession for myself, creating card games of various kinds. This is the next instalment in my creations, with many packing peanuts of various kinds. And there it is. That is the next big thing, I think, just full of more peanuts. I thought that would be a card. It's completely blank. It's very touching, actually, when they write you a little nothing. So anyway, this is what I call Algebrain, as you can see. There it is. Now, the reason I've created this is because so many of my students over the last 8 years that I've been teaching maths really struggle when it comes to algebra. They're very good at number, they're very good at understanding kind of amounts and quantities and measures and even using numbers inside formulas. But as soon as it comes to putting letters into maths and trying to do maths with letters, so move things around in equations, rearrange formulae, whatever it might be, they really struggle. And that's why I've created Algebrain. Algebrain takes things like you know those phrases that's like divide both sides by 2 or add 3 to both sides or whatever. When you're trying to explain algebra in words, for a lot of people it just doesn't click. Only about 20% of people are auditory learners. They learn by kind of taking in information into their ears. Most people prefer to see things, which is why I've created Algebrain. So this is for the 80% of people who are visual learners, who are tactile, kinesthetic learners, who like to feel things with their hands and look at things and see patterns of motion. And so I've created a very lovely deck of cards with, as you can see, all the different sorts of things you might come across in algebra. And I've got things on the back. They've got the letter C, the letter Y, a plus sign with a minus on the back, and so on and so forth. This is incredibly exciting. It's very nicely printed as well. It's a very good card weight. They're quite kind of rigid almost, in quite a good way. And I have to say, even though I've designed it myself, I'm pretty pleased with how it's turned out. So I'm very happy with that. It says on the back, it is the best way to learn algebra, in quotation marks. You know who said that? It was me. In brief, the way that this works is there are essentially 3 rules that you need. So the rules are when you have a thing that is plussed on one side of an equation, you flip it to the other side of the equal sign and it becomes a minus. So that's one thing that happens, is a plus becomes a minus. Similarly, if you have a minus on one side, it flips over and becomes a plus. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is when you have a times. Let me find a times. Here's a times. So if you have a times in an equation on one side and you want to rearrange it and get rid of that times, it flips and becomes a divide underneath. And so I've done that long kind of fractiony line on this side. And so times becomes a divide. Similarly, if you've got an equation that starts with a dividey thing and you want to get rid of the fraction, it moves up and becomes a timesy thing up here. That's rule number 2. And rule number 3 is, let me find one, there we go. When you've got something squared on one side of an equation, and you can see the squared, this little 2 in the top corner, and there's the outline of where another card would go just beneath it. When something is squared, that will flip over the equal sign and become a square root. And similarly, if you've got a square root on one side, it flips over, becomes a squared. And so the whole point of that is that Algebrain makes maths tactile. It makes it something you can feel, something you can move around, something you can see. You use the letters, of course, and numbers to construct the equation that you're faced with in your GCSE or A-level or even year 6 level maths problem. It's really suitable for any sort of maths you could be doing, up to calculus basically. And you simply use the cards to rearrange the equation with your hands. And once you've rearranged it with your hands, you will then develop this semblance of kind of muscle memory of how equations feel, what they do, what the different bits of it are and how they move around. So then once you've spent 45 minutes or so moving these things around, you will then know exactly how to rearrange any equation, because you'll just remember, oh yeah, that does this, it flips over here like this, rather than thinking through your procedural memory, oh yeah, like subtract 3 from both sides, or do I times by 2 first, or whatever. There's rules within Algebrain as to what order you do things in, and it's the order that I showed you, essentially. So you do rule 1 first, if that's applicable, then you do rule 2, then you do rule 3. And so it really is as simple as that. There's a whole series of instruction cards here that with worked examples on them that show you exactly what you need to do at every single stage. And that is, in a nutshell, what Algebrain is. And I'm very excited about it. My card games so far have all been kind of silly comedy card games based on sort of Cards Against Humanity style things. This is an actual educational resource that will be, I think, vastly helpful to a lot of students, particularly a lot of my students, particularly students with, as mentioned in the description on the back, things like ADHD, who are neurodiverse, who have dyscalculia or dyslexia that makes kind of looking at maths and writing down maths quite difficult for them. People who are just generally different sorts of learners, as 80% of us are. Most people don't learn by being told stuff. Most people learn by doing things with their hands. And this is the first, at least the first affordable set of resources that you can use to learn algebra just with your hands, moving stuff around. I've even got sine and inverse sine there, which is a more advanced thing, but works basically the same way as the square and the square root do. When you've got a sine on one side, it flips to become a sine minus 1 on the other. Yeah, kind of a long, rambly video. Hadn't planned this video in the slightest. It just arrived in the post this morning, and I'm incredibly excited to start playing around with it. One thing I've noticed is I think it needs to be a bit bigger. It's quite small on the side there. So I am going to redesign this. But if you are a teacher, a homeschooler, a maths student, a parent, and you think this might be of some help to you, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to trial this on people. I'd love to get feedback on the design for it. One thing I've tried to do is I've tried not to make it too patronising, I suppose. I think a lot of maths games that you can buy online are very much geared towards primary school, and what I wanted is to create something that works. Like, you wouldn't be embarrassed to use it as a sixth former or something, somebody resitting their maths GCSE for the second or third time, just never really got algebra, but you don't really want to mess around with those like silly year 4, year 6, year 7 level things. This is very much usable for older students, but also just as accessible for younger students as well. And it can do everything from trigonometric equations to linear equations to quadratics to inequalities to everything. There's very simple motion-based kinesthetic tactile rules in here for every sort of equation that you'll see from the age of 9 up to the age of 18. So that's Algebrain. I'm super excited about this one. Thanks for bearing with in a kind of rambly long video, but I'm very, very, very excited to bring this to market later this year. So keep an eye out for redesigns, keep an eye out for testing, more prototyping. I'll be posting about this a lot more over the next couple of months. Thank you very much, and yeah, I'll see you next time.